Right, evening live stream. I think it's working now. Anyone in the chat room, is the audio okay? Yeah. Right, thanks, Carl. Yeah. What button do I press again? Right, recorder's going. When am I ready to go? An exclusive Q&A session with Unicorn HR8, Tim Bowling,
Molly's already changed the world. Small town from the north with a great tradition.
Good evening, all you Blackpool fans out there. Welcome. No question about good evening, Nick. Do you want to just stick your head into shot there? Just think there he is, yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening from me. The best looking member of the team. I thought I'd take myself out of shot, so not to make the others jealous. And finally, we're in the presence of royalty this evening.
Sir Tom Folding.
Tim, it's great. It's fabulous to have you back in a new capacity.
It's good to be back.
It's been
I'll have to apologise to the viewers in advance. As you can probably hear, I'm suffering a bit, so start coughing spit. Just take over.
Have you been quaffing too many prawn sandwiches and champers up in the?
I haven't seen a prawn sandwich. I haven't seen any food yet.
What? Not even any out-of-date lubricants? Right, yeah, Tim, great to have you back. Good to be all getting back together. Right, should we just kick off things with we're going to do a quick Q&A with Tim first. Nick, so as you've got the best voice, I want you to. Oh, you're welcome. Just sort of big you up for a minute. Right.
Unfortunately, we can't see that on the screen.
Could have warmed me.
Just
put
the readers on.
Pull it over, Nick. Go on. You've got hands, haven't you? Yeah.
And most important question on our lips. Can you get some free tickets?
I haven't had a free ticket myself. I paid for mine.
By Jay to center.
I bet you've had a few texts, haven't you?
Holiday.
Actually,
Fly to deep center.
I just had one person. Actually, I'll tell you that.
And he's out. How about that? Helton faked him out. The old veteran acted like he threw it back to the pitcher, kept it in his back pocket. Carpenter was off the bag and he tagged him. Take a look here.
And we need the money. I mean, joking aside,
Uh-oh.
Right, so to put you on the spot, I don't know why I've put this Q&A on the first.
Fraser was halfway between second and third.
Well,
Baptiste has made two fine defensive plays here this inning.
Got to put a star next to that one.
Right, so
That saves a run. Let's see what happened. He's off.
to be honest, they never said anything.
The hidden ball trick.
Hidden ball trick. He lifts up his foot, shuffles his feet, and lost contact, and Goins had the ball on Frazier.
231 against Brothers.
Huge jump, and they got Altuve hung up. Good block by Rosario, and a good feed to Brothers, and Brothers will tag out Altuve. Well, for those in the stands that say, oh, that never works when the runner takes off for second and a first and third, bluffing the throw just worked on Altuve. Well, that's why you practice it. Houston takes the lead 3-2.
Into left field. Round third, going to hold him there. Cabrera up with the ball. And the Diamondbacks have the tying run 90 feet away with one out in the 8th inning.
And yet another pinch hit by the guy they used to call Tony the Tiger.
Right now, Todd Jones would love to get a ground ball. Counsell in the leadoff spot who comes to the plate.
Well, I don't know if it would be as big for Fred Counsell.
Did they get it?
They tried the hidden ball trick, and I think they may have gotten the runner at third base, Luis Torrero.
Torrero's out at third base.
Mike Lowell had the ball. Todd Jones was not on the mound.
It was a suggestion that you know I went forward with it, and we met with Paul Cooper and agreed that that was what we would do. One of the things we specifically asked for when we met with him, that was a non-voting role. We felt that that could be a little bit too divisive on a practical level. I'm not sure how much difference it makes anyway, because what we say.
Right, sorry, just to interrupt him. The live stream.
Oh dear,
because that cable got pulled out. They've missed that question. So
okay,
could you just very briefly say that answer again?
Yeah, we'll do it again. So basically, the first.
So the question was, how did you get approached, Tim?
Yeah.
So
we're in London. It was just in the early afternoon. The judge was seeking clarification from Clifford Chance as to what the receiver's intentions were, and as part of what he said in the additional evidence that was given, was that it was the intention to introduce a fan representative onto the board during the interim period when he was in control. So we'd had no real prior indication of that, and sort of all looked up, and obviously it's something we've sought actively over an extended period of time. So following on from that, we had an approach from Paul Cooper. We hadn't met him previously, but we were introduced to him after the hearing, and he contacted Christine and I and asked for a meeting, essentially to agree who it was going to be. And between Christine and I, we decided that it was best if she maintained her independence as chair of the trust, and that therefore I would go forward and be the representative that Paul sought. So we met with him. We agreed what was to happen. It was then a case of wait and see. And obviously the call came 2 weeks ago today. Get yourself down to the football club, and the rest is history.
Yeah, absolutely. So day to day then, what are your responsibilities? Obviously you've still got your other job to do. So
well, once Kristen and I had agreed between us what was to happen, I approached the directors and sort of made them aware of this opportunity had come up, because I had to have their agreement to do it. And Paul had already said, look, he foresaw quite a heavy involvement in the first 2 weeks, and that from then things would start to settle down. Obviously, as we all know, Blackpool has been running a shoestring for a long time, and if we were going into what was effectively a distressed situation. So what I mean by that is normally when you take over a company, there's a proper handover. In this scenario, there wasn't, and it was effectively, you're walking in on day one, you don't know the staff, you don't know the figures, you don't know effectively how to do anything. So we had a very, very steep learning curve. By we, I mean, I'm talking Ben, Mike, Ian and myself, just to get a grasp of what was going on. And we've all got different skill sets. So hopefully between us, and with a lot of help from some very supportive staff, I think we delivered what we needed to deliver for that first home game. I'm just very, very glad we weren't at home Saturday before, because that would have been horrendous.
A bit too tight.
It would have been too tight.
Yeah.
And so, if you think you're coming in, I mean, it's all right coping with a crowd of 2,000, 3,000 with a few away fans, but to go from that to the biggest home attendance that we've had for 42 years, stress tested everything we did to the nth degree. I mean, and things weren't perfect, as no doubt people might put to me, but I think all in all, we did a very good job. We catered for over 500 in hospitality. We had a packed ground, and it was a real party atmosphere from start to finish, and it was a very, very special day.
Oh, it was, Dean. I totally agree. And like you say, there's always going to be the odd hiccup, isn't there? But there's so much to sort out in a short space of time. You can't get everything right in that.
No, I mean, there's almost like a priority list. I mean, we go in and the hospital. Bear in mind, I'll give you an example because I took a couple of jobs on. One was I want to get that screen working. It's not perfect, and you'll see. I'm not going to spoil it, but you're going to see different provision in relation to that in the coming matches, starting tomorrow. But we wanted to get it working because it was symbolic. But basically, it's 9 years old. I don't think it was new technology when it came in, and it's been left to go to rack and ruin. So it was a real task just to get what we got on, which was 2/3 of the screen with the score and the timer on. But I felt it was quite important. The symbolic point.
Yeah.
We wanted to get the Oyston signage down, which we did.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was like the Berlin Wall coming down. That wasn't it?
It was, wasn't it?
Saddam Hussein.
Hitting it with slippers.
You should have like sold tickets for that. You made a load of money, wouldn't you? Get some popcorn in.
And we wanted new card machines that took Apple Pay and everything, which we got in. Famously, obviously, Mr. Pilly's car scene outside the stadium took too much consternation.
Tongues wagging.
It certainly did. It's probably been a bit mischievous, who knows? And we also hospitality. They were catering from hospitality out of one kitchen. The other kitchens weren't fit for purpose, so we had to get those up and running.
What do you mean exactly by not fit for purpose, Tim?
Well, they hadn't been. They've just been left for quite a long period of time, and obviously hygiene's of the utmost importance when you're catering, and you couldn't walk in there and use them.
Is this for corporate? Talking about?
Yeah. So
really?
So we had a standing start. So we had one kitchen that was usable, the others weren't. So we had to get people.
What sort of a state were they in? Just to
they weren't good. Let's put it that way. It was. They were in a very, very
dead mice,
state.
rats hanging around.
Well, maybe not quite that, but they were. We that's why corporate sales only went up on Monday, because we had to be certain that we could actually deliver it. We had to get Rollies back in. Of course, they left in last November. Thankfully, I think if they hadn't been prepared to come back in, then we'd have probably had to sack it off for the first game, and because I think we'd have struggled to get a new provider to deliver what we needed to deliver.
And great work from Andy Grice as well.
Massive. I mean, there was a big sale. Him and Rob, who's the commercial manager there, worked really, really well together over the course of the week. And as I said, we had 300 plus in the lounge. We had a packed 1953 suite, and every box was sold. So that's been a long time. Since that was the case. Yeah. And I think we had one complaint all day that from somebody who didn't like their veg al dente, and that was the sum total of the complaints we had in the lounge. So, that's great, isn't it? So
that's all you've got to. Yeah,
then it's fantastic.
It's a result.
And it's a great testament, to everybody coming together, both from on the board, then Andy and Rob, the hospitality manager, and then right down to Rollies and all the staff that they brought in. It was just a good team effort, and it was my directors took a table up there and showed a bit of support, and they were very, very pleased. The people in the box were pleased.
Yeah.
So that type of thing, whilst it's not what most of us do, and despite suggestions to the contrary, not something I do very often, it is important because it's a massive revenue generator. I had to sing on, not literally sing, but I had to do my bit in there, but I didn't get a meal out of it. It wasn't about that for me. I wanted to be out there on the with everybody else, and I was out there with my son and my dad, who cleaned seats for 2 days, and his good lady. But from my point of view, it's important that, because the people who are in the hospitality are the ones that are going to sponsor the club, the ones who are going to put that extra little bit of revenue in that we need on top of the season ticket money. So they were just a couple of jobs I took on, but that took up a lot of my time. So getting back to the original question, I've had to take some time off work. I've had to work weekends. I've worked last Saturdays and Sunday for the last 2 weeks on my day job. This Sunday on my day job, and just trying to mix it around a bit. But I will have to get my equilibrium back, I think.
Yeah. You're a Superman, Tim. Should come on with a cape on.
I just don't sleep.
Do you think this will, just be interim until they get buyer, or do you think this might, your role might continue with new owners, or there may be some sort of fan representation going forward?
I like to think so. I mean, the BST members have voted for a small minority share in their ideal world and representation on the board, whether it will be me or whether if a new owner comes in and they're prepared to consider fan representation, that it goes up for election or something like that. I don't know. This is why, I mean, the receiver hasn't got time to mess around putting a vote out there as to who it is. So he approached us, and it is an interim appointment. I mean, it's expected to end over the summer. Yeah. What happens beyond that will depend on a whole variety of factors, but most importantly, the thought process of the next owner of the Blackpool Football Club.
Yeah.
But my view is, why wouldn't you have a fan, at least one fan who you listen to on a regular basis, whether you do it in the boardroom or whether you do it through interaction with fans in other ways, up to the individual.
Just to paraphrase you, Tim, a phrase you used to use, a delicious irony.
Yes.
How did Andy Grice get involved? I think the delicious irony being that yourself and him obviously were victims of you-know-who. I love the delicious irony of the fact that Andy's also in his position, helping bring punters in, and yourself. So it's absolutely great.
Well, we were going from a standing start, and I think Rob will be the first to say he's had a difficult job in the 7 months since he came in, and he needs to build his network up with the likes of us who've been boycotting. So first thing I do, first day with him, is go through my phone and say, ring this one, ring this one, ring this one. That's literally what I did. Steve Sharp came in with his own list as well, and that gave him a start. And then because I knew it was going to be busy, and we only had that 5-day window to sell. So Andy had said he could get a little bit of a sabbatical from his day job, and so I put it to Ben and to Michael and to Ian that perhaps Rob needed some help. Rob was happy to have the help. So Andy came in, and they've extended it until after Doncaster, and then we'll have to see what happens from there. But most certainly, he's sold well. They both sold well, and as we've seen from the fact that we packed the place out. But we need that. We need that revenue. We need those revenue streams, and it's not just hospitality. It's the boards. It's the match sponsors. It's the match ball sponsors. It's the sock tie sponsors. It's the whole shebang that we need to focus on, because we've got to demonstrate to the EFL that we're self-sufficient. And I think that's going to factor into the points deduction.
All right. Going it.
So what are your first impressions of the new board now you've
have a drink
been in there for a few days?
I think I might need one. I think it gives a good balance. I mean, dealing with the non-exec directors, obviously myself, I've got a legal background, which I think is useful. And secondly, so I like to think I'm a problem solver in my job. So that they're the skill sets I bring, plus who I know, my interaction with the various fans groups, and not just BST. I've got a good relationship with the Muckers. I know the committee members at BSA, and obviously the TKs very well. So when we look at the different fans groups, I'm able to pick the phone up to them all and speak to them, give a little bit of feedback to the boards as to how I think the dynamics work between the different groups. Ian's a finance guy predominantly, so he brings a good head around the table for figures. And then you've got Ben and Mike, who've obviously been involved in Man United and clubs in Europe, both of them, and they bring their skill sets in, which is the level of skill sets we've probably not seen at Blackpool Football Club for a very, very long time. They are football men through and through, and they've spent their whole careers in the game. And
I think that even the short space of time they've been in there as a fan, things like the communication, it's so different to what we've been used to, and it's so refreshing, and it's probably normal at a lot of clubs, but because we've not had
it's weird, isn't it?
It's just so refreshing. That they're putting stuff out there, keeping you informed with what's going on. It's absolutely fantastic,
and it's the start. We've been with the communication that you've seen has come at a time when we are under massive pressure as well. Hopefully those pressures will start to relieve, because Ben and Michael are getting to know Blackpool a lot more after 2 weeks. Ian and I are there to support them, and they'll start bringing additional members of staff in over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, which will hopefully start making things a little bit smoother as the way things happen. But on the communication side, like on social media, for instance, Stuart, who does social media at Blackpool. He's had the most difficult job in media, football media, probably over the last 2 or 3 years, because constantly being hit by negatives must be very demoralising. And he's, you can see by his social media output.
Every time a statement, there'd be everything. The time something came out, all you'd see was comments saying "not a penny more, not a penny more." There was very little about what was going on at the football club or the team or anything.
It's like the equivalent of being a cold caller, isn't it?
It is.
You're just kind of dealing with negative all day, and all of a sudden it literally. I saw his face. He put his first communication out, and it got, I've forgotten how many retweets, but there was hundreds of retweets of it. And you could just see he's like a big millstone go off his shoulders, and
it must be a much better place to work.
Oh,
goodness me.
Well, that's a lot. A lot of the feedback we've had is that that is the case, and I'll tell you what, they've all pulled the stops out. I mean, the ticket office, they've been staying open until 7:30, but what people don't realise is when they shut the doors at 7:30, they then start on the ringbacks, and they're leaving at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. We did shut on Wednesday, but to be honest, we wouldn't have shut on Wednesday, but for the fact that the season ticket machine had broken after not being serviced for however long. Surprise, surprise. And
you did it?
So and then it was our decision to say, look, Sarah, focus on getting those second tickets out to those who were expecting the season ticket cards, and breathe, but they're there. It won't surprise me if they're there. They'll be there now. Doing ringbacks,
because I imagine it was skeleton staff, wasn't it?
Oh, massively so. I mean, the ticket office is better staffed on the Saturday of a game because the part-time staff come in, but you've got to know how to work the ticketing system. You can't just throw people onto the ticketing system without knowing what they're doing. They've got to be properly trained, but the people who train them haven't got the time to train them. So this is where BST were a great help, because they came in and operated a cash desk where just a load of tickets were printed off for one block, and you could just come in and buy the ticket, and as long as you had cash, and it just took pressure off all that time. So, but all the way through the club, I can say that everybody's been prepared to go that extra mile. We've seen with the volunteers that have come in. I mean, that was a Herculean effort by them, because I can't tell people. I mean, I know that Lee put some video blogs out, didn't he? But I can't tell people how dirty those seats were, and how much pigeon mess there was, not just on the seats, but also on the feet, where your feet.
Was it throughout the stadium that then, or is it one particular stand?
It was more prevalent where there was less footfall, and particularly in that south-east corner, where the end of the the end of the south stand is. A lot of the pigeons congregate there and come under the stand at that point, and apparently, that's where they do the mess. But I've got to say, I didn't actually do it. I just didn't have time. Otherwise, I would have done. But they all turned up. There was like a little bit of a blitz spirit, and they all came in, had lunch in Rollies every day, smiles on the faces, and it was great to see. And they were then getting again on Sunday, cleaning the stadium for tomorrow night, filled 40 odd bags full of rubbish, which that's not something that probably needs to go on forever, but it just takes the pressure off the rest of the staff when they are at skeleton levels at the moment. And I think it's been very well received by the board and by the staff members who've otherwise would have been stuck with all those additional duties to do.
Have you seen anything of the players or the manager, or seen any kind of reaction there? Or
the first day, Ben, I, and Ian went down and met them in the changing rooms, and all introduced ourselves to them. There's all the uncertainty on that first day. What is a receiver? Why are we here? Are we going to get paid? All those things are naturally going to be going through their heads. But I think we reassured them, and I spoke just from a fan's perspective and said, look, there's probably only Phil Horner and Nathan Alfonso in the room who've seen Blackpool's stadium as it should be, and you're all going to see it a week on Saturday. And I think it was beyond expectations as to what we saw. So we had that, but then quite often they're up in Rollies having something to eat because we've sort of, I think it's going to change next week, but we've used Rollies as the base because you want to be visible. And if you're stuck away in an office somewhere, nobody sees you. And I think it's important in those early days that we were seen, and people could come in and find us. And then, of course, the players would come in there. Terry's been brilliant, as we saw. I mean, he was brilliant when he came to the BST meeting, but he's been very, very supportive. He's clearly thriving on the electricity that's going around the club, and the players will come up and high five you, shake your hand, or whatever. They're not just going and sitting in the corner and eating the food. They're interacting with the fans who are in there, because quite often they come in when the volunteers are in as well, having their lunch. And but there were quite a few players have always come up to me and just said hello, when they come into the room. So it's been great.
It's probably nice for them to actually see people in the club.
Yeah, yeah. And people have actually got smiles on their faces all the way around, and I think there's just a real good spirit, and that hopefully transfers to them. Might not have done the first game at Oxford, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
but I think when we go to Accrington, then we're seeing that they're actually able to lift the game a bit where they need to, with the support they're getting. But it starts in the club, and then it finds its way through to the terrace.
Have the new ball been to Squires Gate yet?
Yes, they have. Well, I haven't been up.
What is it now? Is it just a field? Is that all it is?
Yeah, the buildings that were when we used to have the School of Excellence sign. A little known fact, but that photograph was taken by Casper Varpens of all people.
Was it?
Yeah, it was. And then I said, "Oh, that's a good picture. Send that," because it has the dustbin in the corner.
Did he know it was misspelt? The irony of a foreigner noticed the misspelling.
Well, I told him he was there taking pictures, and that was the first time I'd spotted it was misspelt. I think it was in 2014. So I said, "Oh, send me that picture." So I used it, and then obviously it got used quite a bit beyond that in all the newspapers and things. But it was obviously at that stage there was these prefab buildings and bit higgledy-piggledy and in very poor condition, but and a lot of them were full of rubbish, like loads of chairs and tables and stuff. But at least there was somewhere to shelter out the cold. Now there's nothing. It's just an open area.
Did you read that thing in the paper about there's a portaloo there and it fell on Mark Cullen's car?
Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
Terry was giving some form of team talk or tactical talk to the players. They were all facing the car and he had his back to it, and they're all like, obviously I don't know whether they were laughing or what or giggling. And he said he turned around and said, "This portal, these are quite windy, and the portaloo's fallen over onto Mark's car." So
what sort of car it was?
I don't know. I didn't get that much information, but it's a great story.
It's like a 3-wheeled van. He wouldn't have been that bothered, whether it was like a brand new
great story. It's one of those. It's one for the archives, that isn't it?
I mean, looking further down the road, there's obviously no plans to redevelop that. I wouldn't have thought that's a job for the interim board, was it, or is it?
I think it's unlikely. I mean, I think the players and the management seem to like Squires Gate because of the quality of the pitches, which surprised me a little. But they seem reasonably happy with that. But I think it's a short-term solution. Obviously, as the weather gets better, it's going to get easier to use. But obviously, in the middle of winter, and when you've got very windy conditions, I can only guess how bad it is down there.
Are they still getting changed at the club, like having a shower there?
Yeah, they'll come back. Some of them, I think, come ready to in the kit. It's amateurish, isn't it?
Oh yeah, like getting mud all over your car. One thing, isn't it?
And we've got to get to the point where it's professional. Now, where that is, obviously, that Terry will have a big say in that, and his coaching staff will have a big say in that. But we need to get to the point where they're getting the facilities that they deserve, whether that's renting somewhere in the short term or whether it's making some form of temporary arrangements at Squires Gate, or whether we look at another solution. But I think that other solution has to be, as you say, for the new owner. I mean, it's not our brief. Our brief is to steady the ship and prepare it for sale. And that's what we're there to do. What happens after the sale it will depend on that new owner. And
it's a shame. Pontins has been knocked down. They could have just nipped over there into the chalet showers.
I know.
Could have rented 11 chalets.
There's a nice pool there and everything, wasn't there?
I know you obviously can't go into detail on interested parties and stuff, but the receiver sort of mentioned that there's potentially quite a lot of interest. Would any of them been there on Saturday or have seen anything so far?
I don't know. I mean, the Valeri had previously spoken about having a UK investor that he wanted to work with. That individual wasn't there. Beyond that, I would say it's quite likely that there was one or more people who would be interested there. It's only natural, but you're speculating as to who they might be. The receivers had all that interest initially is to be registered with the receiver, not with us.
Yeah.
So if we do get any approaches, we've got to refer them on. So at the moment, I can say hand on heart, I'm none the wiser than anybody else as to where this is likely to end up. But I'm envisaging that at some point the receiver's got to put some form of prospectus together and give a date for expressions of interest. Obviously, whoever it is has to pass the ODT, the owners and directors test, and they also have to satisfy the EFL if they knew it. I think this applies anyway, but most certainly if they're new into football, that they've got the finances to run it for 12 months. So it's not just simply a case of ticking a box ticking exercise, which it is to a certain degree with existing owners, because of course they're already in there, and they have a self-certification document to fill in every year, as I've had to do. It's quite ironic that with all the representations I've made,
a delicious irony, if you will.
Another delicious irony. But I got to fill in my form, and
did you pass?
Well, I'm assuming that I better had it done.
But if anybody was there and sat, you know, you can't fail but to be impressed, can you, with the potential that's there? You know, it was just fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, our job is to try and harness that and keep that going. I mean, it is difficult with Tuesday night games, but hopefully the Blackpool public will, you know, after experience what they experienced on Saturday, will come back and want to try and recreate it as best they can.
Yeah.
I mean, the Muckers have got to take great credit for the way that they've sort of commandeered the North, because it has really created like a sort of an ultras end.
Yeah.
And I've never seen in any game I've been to anywhere in the world, and I've been to quite a lot, obviously with Germany trips and everything. I've never seen a block keep, well, not just one block, 2 or 3 blocks there, keep going like that in the way that they did. And they didn't even start when they got on the ground. They were doing it outside the Excelsior for 2 or 3 hours before. 2 or 3 hours before that.
Yeah.
So God knows what they're. I mean, my voice is bad, but God knows what theirs were like after all that.
I think they were well lubricated throats.
Well, they did keep it lubricated, I think, didn't they?
Right, there's a couple more questions, Tim, but the more kind of in the future kind of thing. Yeah. So we'll give you a bit of a break. So we'll just move on to the actual outline of the show now. So Accrington away. We'll come on to the big game shortly after that. But the first game of the new regime was Accrington away. Obviously, I had to miss that as well because I was on holiday. But who went there in this room?
I did.
Oh, you all went.
There you go.
So, Matt, do you want to describe the kind of the day there? What was the atmosphere like? A party atmosphere, I guess.
Yeah, it was. It was good. I mean, obviously, it was good. It was still a sense of a bit of surreal sort of. Christ, we're going back to a football match after so many years, obviously. So it was good just to see people again and a few hugs and shaking hands and all that sort of carry on and just almost get back into the swing of it pretty much straight away, really.
An open terrace as well, and that obviously helps things, I think.
Yeah, it's funny, really. Sometimes you wish they had a roof over you, you know, because open terraces, it's sort of the sound sort of can dissipate a bit, can't it? You know, but it's still a 1800 following or thereabouts, and pretty much.
It looked more than that as well, didn't it?
It did, yeah. It felt like it was more than that as well.
Well, there was a fair old queue outside, wasn't there?
There was to get in, wasn't there?
I think 1,500 tickets sold or something, and there was a good, I don't know, maybe another 400 outside at least, I think. And
it was what I call a proper old school game.
It was an old school game, yeah.
It's sort of on the pitch anyway. It was a bit of a warm up for Saturday because the pitch was as bad as ours, really, wasn't it? It was bobbling around all over the place. So we all knew that we weren't going to be watching top quality football that we last saw Blackpool play, or pretty much last saw Blackpool play. So there's a bit of a culture shock as far as that was concerned, but there's no doubt in the full commitment of both teams. Actually, it was pretty blood and thunder. Really, there was lots of chunky challenges.
I tell you what, Grandelay took some stick, didn't he?
No,
he was. They obviously had him down as someone they needed to stop.
That's right, and the midfield was. Oh, honestly, it was like Sunday morning at some points. It was really quite vicious at times, but it was blood and thunder, and probably what a derby should be in the old.
Remind me the old games at Bury and Rochdale in the 80s.
Absolutely.
That's what actually reminded me of it.
Yeah.
So, and there was so many people out, and I quite like. I know I bagged on about fan zones in the past, but it was quite good to see a fan zone in practice full of Blackpool fans, because I thought the pre-match in there was brilliant.
Yeah.
What exactly was this fan zone?
It was basically a big marquee
right
next to the stadium that had a bar at one end, a bottle bar at the other end, and then with access to a big catering van. And somebody play music, and you could basically go up there and put requests on. So people were going up and asking for Oasis and things like that.
And the Nolans.
And we got Neil Diamond on,
Sweet
didn't
Caroline,
Sweet Caroline, things like that. And it really, there was a really good party atmosphere. Remember a little bit like we went to Peterborough. We went to that Charteris, is it called, down in the boat that was down by the river. And it was a little bit like that, but colder.
I was in a weird nightclub at Peterborough. It was like some weird nightclub.
I was.
Were you in there?
That upstairs one.
What at 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah, it was. I was in there.
It was odd. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the Accrington game obviously was 2-1. Last-ish minute.
Yeah, we started off well. Obviously, we scored, so it was a bit of a fairy tale start, scoring after
2 minutes, was it?
A couple of minutes, or 3 or 4 or whatever. And then they seemed to boss it after that for me. First half, I think midfield we just couldn't get to grips with them.
No.
They were spreading it out to both their fullbacks.
Yeah, coming down the wings a lot. I mean, I'd been out all afternoon, so it was a bit of a blur. But I remember thinking they're getting down the sides too easily. We just couldn't get a grip of it.
We just seemed to be very narrow, whereas they were really expansive.
Yeah.
And
you can see there's a game plan they're working to. That lad who was coming down the left was just destroying us, wasn't he? And that's how where their equaliser came from in the end.
Yeah, that's right. And then he tweaked it in the second half. Put, I think it was Evans, I'm still trying to get used to the names of the players, into more of a central role, and it just seemed to work a lot better. So second half, unusually for an away fan, we actually saw most of the play in our half.
Yeah.
So fair play to them for getting stuck in like that, and obviously we got our just rewards in the end. And
Jay Spearing banged it down the middle,
banged it in, and then obviously the
pandemonium
beer bottle gate.
Actually, yeah. So what was your thoughts on that? Nick, gives you.
Well, he'd been getting a bit of stick there, keeper, hadn't he? Which is always going to happen when you.
Was it hard? Was it good-natured stick, or was
it? Well, and then I think when the penalty was given, he went over to his post and kind of stood and faced the fans, didn't he? I don't think he said anything, but he was giving a bit of a look, and he was getting a bit of grief, and then obviously the bottle's gone. I didn't actually see him throw it back.
No,
I didn't realise what happened. I just saw the ref run up to him and give him a red card.
We were scratching our heads.
Yeah, it wasn't until I got home and saw it on Sky Sports I realised what had happened.
I think it was the linesman, wasn't it, that saw the offence, and then he did sort of chuck it.
Have you seen it on YouTube?
It
was kind of,
but
I don't think, he wasn't launching it at anybody in particular.
It was just a general lob into the crowd, wasn't it? It's a bit harsh.
But, rules is rules, unfortunately, and if you got an officious linesman and all the rest of it, he's going to get the red card out, which was harsh because obviously passion and all the rest of it, and we'll go on to a little bit more about that, what's happened this weekend. But
of course we saw the birth of that song, which we'd never heard.
I don't know why you're looking at me, Tim. I don't know.
You must be the only person in Blackpool's not sung it.
Right, so that nicely segues onto the big game on Saturday. Gutted. I was absolutely gutted. I've been searching flights, and there was no way I could have done it. I could have got back. But so
let's didn't miss much.
Let's start with you then, Nick. So I'm presuming you ended up at the Excelsior at 10:30, something like that.
Well, you had to go early because I did, because my wife actually went to the game, and she was getting picked up just after 11. So she said, "Well, if I'm dropping you off, you're gonna have to go early." So, what can you do? So few beers before the game, and it again, the atmosphere was just, I've never seen anything like it. Even when we were in the Prem, I mean, outside the Excelsior, it ended up with the police either side of the road just to keep the road clear and get the traffic through. People were going in.
Sheer volume of numbers
was absolutely pandemonium in there, sold out. People going down the road to Tesco to get carry-outs. It was just an absolutely fantastic atmosphere, absolutely brilliant. All you just saw all the time was people hugging each other and, renewing old friendships and stuff. And then everybody marched down to the ground at the same time. Traffic was just at a complete standstill. There was like 500 people in the road making their way to the ground. Just never seen anything like it. Absolutely fantastic.
There was the banner of one of the muckers holding the heads of KO.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It reminded me of Borussia Dortmund, that on the yellow wall, you know, where they bring something up, and there's one that they bring up where I think he's got like what do you call them? I've lost that. Binoculars. Couldn't think of the word then. They got binoculars up to his eyes, and it just reminded me of that type of thing where, you know, you create like a choreographed ultras thing before a match, but it's fantastic.
Maybe that's something we could have in the stadium going forward. I like the fact there's banners now in the stadium.
Yeah,
and I'd love to see various banners kind of just pinned up and.
Just depends how many new sponsors we get, doesn't it?
Well, I just noticed there's quite a lot of concrete on show in Bloomfield. I think it'd be fantastic if we get a lot of the per donkey artwork in banner form.
It would be good. I know. I went to FC United a couple of times. Again, really from the point of view, seeing how the fans ran their own club and picked up a few ideas for bars and things like that from there. But they did that. They had one particular side of the ground that hadn't been developed, that was basically a big lump of concrete. And they literally covered it in all sorts of FC United related artwork, and it looked really good. And I think there's a place for that in the stadium, particularly in those areas. You know, the East probably isn't going to be open every game, or if it is, it's part of it. Great place to put a load of the. You know, we've got some rather iconic banners that we've picked up over the years, haven't we? You know, that that effectively can be used, I think, and a home found for them.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea, that.
So, right, Matt, what was your pre-match build up to the game?
I did go to the Excelsior, but I was sober that day because I had a prior engagement in the evening, so I had to be on my best behaviour, which was no bad thing. Really, I really enjoyed just the fact that, you know, you can obviously soak up the atmosphere sober as well and take it all in, and it was really good atmosphere. We had friends who were coming down from North Shore, so they met at the Tower and wandered back with what was apparently about 4,000 people coming from the town centre as well. And then after that, we were walking away from the Excelsior it's probably about 1:30, something like that. And we were trying to get another drink. Well, they were trying to get another drink somewhere else, and we just couldn't get in anywhere, which is just unheard of.
Yeah.
And obviously the number one isn't there anymore, unfortunately. So you're limited, and the old bridge was still stubbornly only allowing away fans in.
Was it?
Yeah, even though he was turning away dozens of Blackpool fans. And I don't know how many Southend fans were in there, but, you know, it doesn't matter. On a day like that, there was no need for anyway.
How much is the number one up for? I might buy it.
It needs a bit of work doing, I would imagine. But and then we just went straight into the ground, and because the concourse, we were in the north, and because the concourse is fairly small and tight and all the rest of it, and the bars were there, it was jam packed at 2:00. It was mental. I've never seen anything like it. Normally, it's just pretty quiet, and you can just wander around and all the rest of it. But yeah, spot on. Brilliant atmosphere underneath there, as good as it was anywhere else that we've been prior to that, really.
So Tim, obviously you're having a more involved,
slightly different experience.
Not so much you at 10:30 in the morning with the muckers getting bladdered, were you?
Actually, Ben went down and had a pint with them in the Excelsior. He went down, I think, about 12:00 and met up with the lads. I didn't. To be honest, I went in the ground quite early. I spoke to Ben the night before and said, look, you know, what time do you want me in? Don't want to be under your feet. If you don't want me, I'll just do my own thing. But he said 9:00. So I thought, right, I'll get myself up in there. And but to be honest, things really started to come together on the day, and I ended up like almost twiddling my thumbs a little bit. So once hospitality opened, I did a lot of meet and greet up there. Just tried to get to know people who were going and...
being like a finalist off The Apprentice doing the last task, weren't you?
I know, yeah, it was. And then he was very much like that. And then once everybody sat down to eat in the lounge, me and my youngest, Elliot, went down to meet my dad, who was doing the march. So we got onto the promenade, saw this wave of Tangerine coming towards us. Because to be honest, I thought there might be 2,000 on that march, and there was at least double that, I think. So if not a few more. And rather funnily, he'd got there in time and nipped into Poundland, as you do, for something. Come out and the march had gone, and he never caught it up. So
is he quite fast on his feet, or has he got walking sticks or anything? Did he?
Not quite walking sticks, but there's no way he was catching that march up. Let's put it that way. So that was me and Elliot giggling because he'd made a big point. To be fair to him, he'd done 2 days. He'd done 2 days washing seats. So
No,
I said,
fair
right.
play to
He
him.
says, I'm going on. He's not really a Blackpool fan either, so more of a Liverpool fan. So I was a bit surprised. And he said, I'm doing the march as well. So I thought, I've got to have to go meet him if he's doing it.
Sounds like he's been
I never
converted.
saw him. So, but there was a tremendous spirit. I said, I'm kicking myself. I didn't nip down to the Excelsior before the game, but there was a tremendous spirit in the march as well. And then I went back in and basically I wanted to be beseat quite early.
Where were you sat?
I was originally.
Was it no in seat?
No.
Again, another delicious irony.
I've stayed out to the director's box. I actually ended up in M block, only because I was doing a bit of stuff upstairs, so I didn't want to be. I actually had seats in the east with all. There's a big group of us in there, but I ended up swapping them mainly because you'd have to. I didn't know I was going to get to the side of the stadium and back again when I needed to. So ended up on M block, but I'm back in the south stand on Tuesday night, tomorrow night. So that's where my original home.
I was kicked out of M Block after the Premier League season, so can I have my old seat back?
Were you in there? Or
Yeah,
did you lose it to the 53 club?
Yeah. They gave me the option of buying it back for £600 for like a loaf of bread, a slice of bread, and a cup of tea at half time. Nah, you're all right.
It is. They are quite good seats there, aren't they?
I was in there for years through Jim's company. You
see a lot of what's going on and all because the lad who scored, as we'll come to, the lad scored the own goal. When they were still deciding whether they were going to kick off again, he was in the tunnel kicking the wall because he was that frustrated with himself. It was quite amusing to watch.
You should have said to him, "That's what you should have done instead of heading it."
He was not impressed. I don't think his teammates were too either as well.
We got the weather I noticed on the march because I did look at the forecast. I was a bit, God.
It was horrendous.
Well, it was a bit of everything though.
Yeah.
There was hail at one point. It was windy, sunshine the next. I don't know if you saw on the one of the TV features I saw. I can't remember. It was the EFL program or one of the news items. You could see the waves crashing over the prom. It looked, and while the march was going past, it looked absolutely tower in the background. It looked absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
we normally get Carl weather, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Carl doing his rain dance.
The coffin washout. Do you remember that?
I remember one of them. Yeah, it was absolutely horrendous.
Well, that was the one where I saw the forecast and because I'd had this great idea because I was going to borrow a coffin off Box Brothers. And I thought, God, that's going to be heavy, and then what we're going to do with it afterwards. And so I had this great idea of buying in a cardboard theatrical one. And then I saw the weather, so I spent my Friday night with a tin of varnish, putting about 6 layers of varnish on this coffin, and it just about got round the march before it collapsed.
It's like a papier-mâché by the end of it. Remember the days, eh?
And if you remember the march, I think we did when we played Fleetwood. Was
That's
awful.
the one when it absolutely tipped it.
Awful.
Down,
So we've not done. I think JD1 was all right, but and JD3. But generally, anytime we did any form of protest, it was awful weather. So it was really nice that the sun seemed to be shining on us.
Yeah,
didn't
cleared
it?
up, didn't it?
Yeah. So the game itself, Matt, what were your emotions as you walked into that stadium for the first time?
I was in the north. I think Nick was at the bottom of the north. Yeah. So I was in the north with my usual suspects, if you will. There's a dozen of us, and we used to be in the north prior to.
You took quite high up, didn't you?
A few years ago. Yeah, exactly. Well, we're in the west and the north. We sort of split it between us. So we were pretty much right at the back, and then it's funny really. There's 16,000 people there, and we're all buying random tickets, and there's a lad in the gym who I was only talking to 24 hours earlier, who isn't I think he's a regular-ish sort of a guy who goes there, and he obviously has work commitments on a Saturday. Lo and behold, he's sat next to me, and we were having a chat and all the rest of it. And I was just ready about 10 minutes before kick-off, and bloody Oggy comes with his drum, literally 2 seats to the left of us. I thought, this is going to get really noisy, this, even noisier and noisier. But it was absolutely belting atmosphere. It was the best atmosphere I've encountered probably at Bloomfield Road. I think probably ever, really.
I would go further than that and say it's one of the best atmospheres I've. The only games I can ever recall where the atmosphere was anywhere near as good as that was in Euro '96 at Wembley.
Yeah, it's definitely away from and Bloomfield Road type of
literally because it was just incessant, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was non-stop. And then there's a football match to play. Obviously, it's sort of is almost second nature given what else is going on, really. And within 10 minutes, the ball was just bouncing all over the place. I don't think there was one pass put together, and reality was sort of like
welcome to League One.
Everyone's like, oh, it's a bit shit, this.
That's right, yeah. And you're trying to see names on the backs of shirts, and no idea, and you're shouting at them like they're, number 6, and you're a dog track or something, and you don't know what. So it was a bit messy for the first 10 or 15 minutes. Game sort of settled down a bit then, but the playing conditions were pretty awful. The pitch, we know, is in such a state that he's never going to be conducive to.
Well, the day before, if you'd seen what
there was a lot of standing water, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Gary,
isn't it that it's like not on vogue, that kind of thing anymore?
No, it doesn't seem to be. That I don't know why. It's obviously something they work on in training, but it's it's manager to manager, club to club. They just have different sort of.
Get him told, Tim. Get him told. Get him on. Players on the post.
I always had somebody on the back post when I was coaching.
Yeah, well,
I'm probably a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to football coaching.
With the respect, Jay Spearing's not going to out-jump anybody, really, is he? I don't think he did much on Saturday during open play of that, so you can at least put one person on the post.
But we turned it around, didn't we? Cometh the man, Armand Angelo, Nick. I've seen the goal, and it looked pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was a decent finish. I mean, he's obviously he's our top scorer, isn't he? And I don't know, sometimes I think he gets knocked off the ball a bit too easily, but then I think he's got something about him. He probably needs a bit more help up there with him.
I thought he was isolated quite a lot. I think the Feeney and Delfonso, if they were playing as a front three, they were miles apart from him. So even when he was winning,
he was a bit on his own.
They were 20, 30 yards off him.
Yeah.
Team, so.
And like you said, Tim, at Accrington, he got a bit of a kick in. But yeah, it was a great finish. Right, I was on the front row. I
was about to say, where were you, Nick?
Right, literally behind the goal, row A in the north, right next to where the Southend fans were. So yes, I had a great view of it, and I'd actually missed their goal. But yeah, brilliant finish. Really good.
So obviously you're very close to Southend fans. How
they spent a lot of it.
How did they take it all in?
I think they were a bit bewildered. A lot of them, every time I look around, there was quite a few of them just filming the north stand and the crowd. Because obviously for them, it's, I said outside the Excelsior, imagine if you're a Southend fan and you didn't know what had gone on at Blackpool and you've turned up, you'd be thinking, they're a bit keen, this lot.
They've come to see Southend, the Battle of the Seasiders.
There was a few lads in fancy dress and stuff. I think they had about 300 or 400 there. But they'll have probably never seen an atmosphere like that either, because it was absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, probably a bit intimidating for them, but it was a decent equaliser.
Who wants to go through the second goal for Southend? Almost the party pooping. Tim, do you want to?
Yeah, well, I didn't get the best view of it from the halfway line, but he just seemed to loop over.
I think he just caught it perfectly, didn't he? And like I say, we've nobody on the line.
Way a bit, didn't he? Really? I don't think
everybody seemed to stop and watch it. And I think they all thought maybe they thought it was going over, but it just drops in on the near left side.
It's a very odd goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've actually not seen it on a playback, so it just all I remembered is this sort of looping cross shot. That just dropped into the empty goal with nobody within about 5 yards of it. So it was it took the wind out of ourselves, because I actually thought we'd looked towards the end of the first half like we were taking charge a bit, and it really, and if there was one point in the game where the atmosphere flattened a little, it was after that for about 15-20 minutes, because the game was very bitty and there was nothing much happening, and we didn't have a lot of shots on target from what I can recall. And you almost feel like the occasion might have got to the players a little bit, maybe.
Does the state of the pitch happen? Affect things? I mean, does this team play football?
Well, I don't think we're massively creative. I think for me in the midfield, Spearing needs somebody alongside him who's creative, because he'll be there all day to get the ball.
What about Jimmy Ryan? What's happened to him? I think he's injured, isn't he?
Injured, yeah.
He hasn't played once this season, has he? If he has, it must be that literally the odd game. Whatever the nature of the injuries, there doesn't seem to be any suggestion he's coming back anytime soon.
No. Sorry, Nick. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, Fons did okay, but I think we're more hard working and grinding out results rather than being spectacular and rolling teams over 3 or 4-0. So, and when you've got a pitch like that, again, it doesn't help because you need 2 touches just to control it. So,
I mean, there was times when Delfonso and Fina were running down respective wings, and obviously the ball was sort of bobbling over the knees and shins and all the rest of it, and they had to
doesn't
stop
make it easy.
And I don't think they were getting much help from their fullbacks either. They weren't really pushing forward and helping them out. And I don't know whether that's a pitch thing or whether that's just, we'll just have a solid back 4 and then let the other guys do it. But there wasn't a lot of creativity there, but the pitch doesn't help.
No, and this comes back to lack of investment because,
of course,
to be fair to Gary, he's they say a bad workman blames his tools, but he's actually got a right to blame his tools because he hasn't got any.
Yeah.
And one of the ideas actually that that Neil Holden came up with, because he'd been helping him a bit on the Friday, was that what could we do to make your job easier? And he's given us an idea of that. And I think we need to get the fans groups together and just say, would it be quite a good idea to try and fundraise for that and get it, and get it. I don't want the fans to have to feel like they have to fundraise all the time, but I think it'd be a nice little gesture just to get things moving, because the players deserve a decent pitch, and we need to deal with that, in my view, and sooner rather than later.
I heard on Gary Luce saying in some interview that part of the south west corner is the pitch is laid on top of concrete, so there's like about 3 inches of topsoil, and that's why it never drains away.
So if you put your fork into it, you hit the concrete.
That's unbelievable.
That's
going to have to get dug up.
And that's the area that the covers were on.
Yeah.
If you saw any pictures, the covers were on that on Friday night, and that was the area where he was particularly focusing on getting the covers on and off. I actually went because after the muckers had laid their square bits of tangerine paper, some of them blew over at night, and I was walking around the pitch. I thought I'll pick some of them up, and I got not the bit just off the pitch. I put my foot there, and it just sunk into mud. And that was off the pitch, to be fair. And on the pitch, it was slightly better. But there's a real problem there. I don't know whether there's a broken drain or whether it is this lump of concrete. But why would there be a lump of concrete under the pitch?
They probably just chucked the old South Stand in there.
It's the Ormerod money.
It's the chest. Quick, get it dug up.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where that could have come from, because I mean the pitch got moved slightly, but not significantly. But maybe it is something linked to that, because it is that particular just about. And I've never realised how bad it was until you actually get really close to it on a day when it's raining. It's awful. Yeah. That has to be a priority in close season. You can't do anything at the moment. It's just
no. I think
impossible.
we've just got to grin and bear the pitch situation, haven't we, for the next few home games, whatever's left, and then, like you said, the hard work starts in the summer on it, and hopefully Gary will get some, backing from whoever to do his job.
I mean, the pitch was fabulous at the beginning of the season. It looked really good. And
they always do, though, don't they? But then it's like you say, having the tools to maintain it. When it's poured down, and you go through that period in winter, and if you don't have the right tools, the guy's not a miracle worker, is he? There's only so much. You could be the best groundsman in the world, but if you've not got the right stuff
and that
day
particular
to day,
corner as well does not get a lot of sun. I think it gets a little bit of sun in the morning. But as soon as the sun goes over the yard arm, it's in shade. And
so normal clubs have these grow lamps, don't they?
I think they're in the club somewhere, aren't they? Under the.
Have we got some?
I'm sure I've heard somebody mention that on Sunday that they've seen them around.
I would guess they're not working.
I would think you're probably right. Yeah.
But it's just going back to the game then. So it was devoid of quality by all accounts. The game was petering out. What was the atmosphere like in the final 5 minutes? Was there any expectation to get another goal, do you think?
Well, we had a shot, didn't we, not long before that got tipped over. Decent save by their keeper, and
obviously they had a one-on-one as well, didn't they?
Yeah, and then we were pushing forward, and obviously that's turned out to be crucial. I was right behind that, and it was a brilliant save. He stood up well, because is it Simon Cox?
Simon Cox, yeah,
he's a decent finisher at League One level. And obviously it made all the difference, because we went up the other end, got the corner, and I didn't realise it was an own goal.
No,
there was a lot of people stood in front of us making the way out by then, so I've just seen the flick on, and then seen it hit the back of the net, and
seemed to go in slow motion.
It did, didn't it? It did. Time stood still for a second, then obviously Again, I didn't realise a lot of people had gone onto the pitch because there was people in front of us kind of stood up on the bit of the fence behind the goal, and then when it cleared, you saw everybody running about.
It was actually one thing you can take plaudits on was the scoreboard that you mentioned earlier, was the fact it's the only scoreboard I've seen in the country that the clock keeps going after 90 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't after 45, bizarrely.
No. Oh, right.
It didn't after 45. It stopped dead on 45. But when you go on to 90, it carries on, which is great.
But they all stop, don't they, at 90 minutes, generally speaking. And then you haven't got a clue how much time's left. So I made my way down, and it was literally 5 seconds before 95, 55, whatever it was on the clock. And I was down there waiting, and then the goal went in, and I just thought, I think we're going to be unlucky if they score in 1 second now. I've got an engagement to go to. I've got to leg it out, so I managed to leg it out. But I let Pandemonium and Stu behind me, but I sort of still had that ready black sort of glow as I left the stadium. It was
like
great.
my
It was
work.
good to be back.
My work here is done.
Yeah.
So as soon as the goal went in, then were people on the pitch? Was it?
Well, yeah, I think mainly from the east initially, was it, or the southeast corner?
It's that corner where you go out in that tunnel, and where people from the east and people from the south.
Yeah.
And I think that's what caused it, in that people were actually
Stood
milling
there
around.
on the pitch,
And then it was just euphoria.
Yeah.
And then obviously following on from that, I think there was a
few started to go on, didn't
they? Few from the north as well.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few on the pitch at one point. But, the game didn't restart, and we'll have to see what the referee.
Oh, was that it? Game over?
Well, there was a bit of confusion.
I think they asked the managers didn't they, if they wanted to restart. And there was only seconds left.
I think literally it was the last kick of the game anyway, and the ref at the end of the day said that he'd blown the whistle and took them off. And so it was a bit, for 1 minute, 2 minutes, we weren't quite sure what was happening. This was the period when the defender who scored the own goal was kicking the concrete. I think he was going to start headbutting at one point.
Maybe we should get him to kick the concrete in the southwest corner. So dig it up, mate. Have a kick of that.
Because obviously they're just above the relegation zone, so it would have been a really, really big 3 points for them. And you sat there and you're sort of reconciling the result, thinking, well, the main thing is we're back and the result doesn't really matter. But the reality is it does.
It does,
And it actually has taken us 1 point because of all the other results, 1 point clear nearer to hitting the playoff zone. So it could at the end of the season be a very, very important goal for us and them.
So the actual pitch invasion itself, I mean, we've seen this weekend of the Grielish thing yesterday, which is outrageous, and we've seen the Man City game, and there's one up in Scotland.
Arsenal,
Arsenal,
Man United. Yeah.
So
obviously very different circumstances. It doesn't help, does it, when that's happened, and then the next day there's a couple more. I mean, it was exuberance, and that was it. And you'd like to think they'd see it in that light. Obviously, we've got the Accrington bottle situation as well. We'll see whether we get a fine for it. Maybe.
Was there an official FA line came out today?
Yeah, I think that. Basically said they're just going to investigate it. I don't think
I saw it in the Gazette, but that's about as much as we know. But hopefully the fact that the game had effectively finished, and it was an unusual occasion. It was euphoria. It wasn't
nothing sinister.
Nothing sinister.
It's not going to happen again, is it? Because we're not going to be in that situation again where it's built up over 4 years and you get a 96-minute equaliser.
I just wonder whether thinking about the ultras end or whatever, at football grounds and standing up in grounds and stuff like that. Obviously, being in a seated stadium takes a lot of that opportunity to be euphoric away from you in a way, doesn't it? Because back in the day, you used to bounce around a little bit more and all that sort of carry on. And it's as if there's, well, what else do some people might just not know what to do and just spill out sort of thing. And I'm not saying that's the right thing or the reason why they did it, but you just think if they were a bit more terrace type of environment, they might be able to
standing.
We're stuck at the moment unless there's a legislation change, because once you convert to an all-seater stadium, you can't convert back. If you've the rules are a bit complicated. If you've been in the Championship for 3 years or more,
a bit nearer the mark, Tim.
So Shrewsbury have been able to convert to safe standing because they haven't been in the Championship for 3 years, and I think it's been a relative success. I've not seen it myself. Sam has been down there as part of the media team at Fleetwood and said it's a great experience. Improves the atmosphere, but you can only imagine what the Blackpool fans would make of that type of area. It could be real carnival stuff every week.
It's certainly something that I think a lot of people are sort of clamouring for now. There's obviously after the success of Saturday and the sort of general sort of starvation of football, and they see other teams like Shrewsbury and loads of obviously on the continent that they do this sort of stuff. There's probably a bit of momentum in that regard. I mean, whether there's an opportunity.
Well, the good thing is with the sea of change around the club at the moment, we have a voice now. Well, and our voices are being heard, unlike the previous regime.
Yeah. I was going to say people are obviously more receptive to ideas, and even if they just get to the first point, then that's 1 point further than they got to.
I mean, just as an example, what I was able to do last night when I finished a day on my day job, I got home. I basically with some feedback from BST and also looking through the forums about what had been good and what had been not so good. I was able to put a bit of a critique together, constructive critique, send it into the other board members today, and say, look, these are things that we can perhaps work on. We were working at ultimate stress test levels, as I said before, and if we cope with that, hopefully we can actually give a better match experience to everybody when we're not quite under the same amount of pressure. I mean, I'd love for that number of fans to be in the stadium every week. The reality is that's not realistically going to happen. And so hopefully the queues at the bars and whatever will be lessened. But we do need to look at solutions, because again, from a purely commercial level, when you've got that 15-minute window of opportunity to sell between 4:15 and 4:05, whatever it might be, you don't want people turning away thinking, I can't be bothered because I'm not going to get one. Yeah, exactly. Well, if they want 2 beers, you want to be able to serve them 2 beers. So, I'm hoping, we can look at some of the ideas that we've seen at FC United, we see in Germany, we see at other grounds, and try and make sure that we incorporate some of them at Blackpool, because, losing the Seaside as bar does put a lot more pressure on the kiosks, particularly in the south end. And the problem in the north would be there anyway, and we need to look for a solution there. And for me, Accrington was a great example of an easy solution. Just stick somebody in a booth with a load of bottles and have them selling them at 4 for a tenner, whatever it might be, and keep the thing moving. Keep people away from the queues unless they want a poured pint or unless they want some food. Yeah, and maybe we could look at having some other kiosks that sell chocolate for the kids or whatever, so they don't have to queue up all the time. There's different things we can look at. They're not all going to happen overnight, and maybe some of them again are for the new owner. But we'll keep pumping the ideas in there. Some of them we've taken up, hopefully.
Cool. I think we're on an hour now, so let's just very quickly run through the other bits of news we've got. Gary Brabin's left the club. That was a bit of a shock. Wasn't there on Saturday, and he's just left for personal reasons. So a big loss. Yeah,
well, I guess so, because he's seemingly worked well with the manager and players, and I know that Mick Phillips was on the radio earlier on, or at least interviewed, and said that he would like somebody, or prefers possibly to work with somebody that he's worked with before, which I looked at his sort of CV earlier on, and he's only been at us in Blackburn, apart from a few non-league clubs. So I don't know how, whether Gary Bowyer is going to come back or what. I don't know, but
bring Thommo home.
Gary Bowyer's at Bradford, Bradford, hasn't he? Bradford manager.
So won 3-0, didn't he?
Yeah, and he'll have taken obviously the rest of his staff with him, I would have thought. So
I would say it's a bit of a shock, I suppose. It's just that when everything seems to be going so well, it's odd timing, but
at least it's not
personal
the manager.
Reasons, like you say, isn't it? So.
Yeah. So we've also got the Doncaster game tomorrow. Thoughts on that? If it's on at all, I mean, it's going to be really bad weather. So let's hope the game's on.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a big one, isn't it? Because they're
just above us.
Yeah, 6th, are they?
6 points.
We can overtake them, can't we? If we buy 2, you have to buy 2 clear goals.
I think so. Yeah, and I noticed their top scorer's out, so that'll
help Marquis?
Yeah, so he's out. So,
but I looked at the Met forecast earlier, and
looks horrendous.
I think we're in the eye of the storm.
50-mile-an-hour gusts. I know the stadium protects you to a degree, but that's not ideal, because they had 40-mile-an-hour gusts on Saturday morning when I first got to the club, and it was unpleasant. So if it's any higher than that tomorrow, then it isn't going to make for it's not going to be a game for the purists.
No. I think we've been educated already into those last 2 games, so we'll ease into a third.
But it's just good to be able to go to another game, isn't it? That's the thing.
It's good to be talking football.
Football, yeah.
The EFL deferred the points deduction. Tim, can you shed any light on What was said there, or have you got any inkling of what's going to happen?
I didn't go. Mike and Ben went, and I think that their focus seems to be on wanting to know that Blackpool's on a firm financial footing. I mean, I've been quite vocal in saying that I don't think that there should be a deduction because it's extraordinary circumstances. It's not what the rule was introduced for. It was introduced to deal with ostensibly teams who were overspending, who were chasing promotion, chasing cup glory, and then leaving trade creditors, unsecured creditors that were significantly out of pocket. We've seen a whole host of clubs have done that. And the points deduction is rightly there as a disincentive to that. But nobody in football, I don't think, could possibly say that Blackpool have benefited in any shape or form. So that's one big thing. And the second big thing, from my perspective, is the fact that that I don't believe that there'll be any significant issues in relation to trade creditors. The main creditor is Valerio Bellicon, and he's secured in relation to the totality of his debt. So it's not just against the football assets; it's against all the Oyston assets. And I think him and his team are reasonably comfortable that there's enough there to make sure that they make a full collection. So our focus as a board is to, as I said before, to steady the ship. It's very, very important from our perspective that people do come back each and every game, put money in the coffers, because this will all be part of cash flow projections. I'm guessing what we've got to do at the moment, but I can think we're going to have to produce projections as regards income, outgoings, etc., and go to them and say we are running this in the black, and that in my view will clearly influence the decision, because they have got a discretion. It's not Blackpool that's gone into receivership; it's the properties company, and
so it's vital that we all keep spending then.
Exactly. I mean, we've saved up a lot of money, I'd like to think, over the last 4 years. We've spent most of it on holidays, whatever else. But we need to get back into the habit of spending, and whether that's by treating yourself to some hospitality, whether that's by going and buying some gear in the shop, which I did the other day for my granddad football tonight. I was sporting Blackpool gear for the first time in God knows how long. And just making sure you come to the games and you buy a golden gamble, you buy a pint, whatever it is, but spend some money.
Have you been playing football this evening then?
Yeah.
Oh, you're a machine. He's a machine.
I dived out 10 minutes earlier. To be honest, the way I played, I think I should have dived out after about 10 minutes after starting, just to make sure I could get here. But there's a fair few off AVFTT go down, and it's good fun, to be fair.
Walking football.
Not much walking going on. It seems to me.
Can you actually run then?
Well, the definition of what constitutes running and walking is a little bit blurred.
Right. What time's kickoffs normally?
6 o'clock, and I think they do it on Monday night down at Play Football.
All right.
And great bunch of guys, and I think they're going to start on a Thursday session in April.
Do you have to be in your 50s, or
no? I think they're fairly relaxed. I think they sort of say over 35. I mean,
I might get myself down there. Where we should go, shall we?
Dust our boots off, John.
Everything's like RoboCop, because you've got there's more lycra and bandages, and it's quite funny. But there's a good crowd down there, and there's no pressure on anybody.
For that.
You can do as much, and there's some good footballers as well. There's some lads who've played at a really decent level. So, if you like it and you're good enough, you can move forward to playing the competitive teams. But this is just turn up and have a kickabout.
Sounds good.
Free first week, so there's a bargain for you, and £4 a week after that. So, a little plug for them there.
Yeah. So, just to wrap up now, I don't know if we discussed this. I don't know I'm the negative, but did anyone see Ian Holloway on Quest TV on the Championship Roundup?
Yeah, I saw it, and it was actually a very good feature. That little bit aside, where he mentioned that Carl Oyston was part of it.
He says he deserves a lot of credit, didn't he?
I can't remember the exact words, but I remember saying something along while swearing at the telly. Put it that way.
But Colin Murray did a fantastic piece. He really put him in his place. And
did you see the piece he wrote in the Metro last week?
That's
probably the best article I've read about our situation, and just the level of understanding that the guy's not a Blackpool fan, but he gets it. It was absolutely fantastic, and he's championed our cause for a long time, and there was a very, very good feature. Right at the start, they talked about us. They finished on Blackpool. It was absolutely brilliant.
Colin Murray was there. Do you remember we got to the Premier League? And I think he was working for Five Live at the time.
He did that in corporate.
We went to. Yeah, we went there. And he was like sticking up for Blackpool, wasn't he? Saying people are saying they're the smallest club ever, and they've got a ramshackle stadium. He said the stadium's great. So yeah, he was a big bonus for us, wasn't he?
Yeah, and the thing is with Ian Holloway,
I don't get why. Why is he saying these things?
He's always been quite contrary, I think, hasn't he? And he stuck up.
He'll probably say something different.
He stuck up for Carl. I mean, when a few fans were having a go at Carl's spending habits, even before Cesar got going, he stuck up for him and said something along the lines of, "If you don't like it, don't come."
Yeah,
which is a very bizarre thing for a football manager to say to the fans who ordinarily
ultimately pay his wages.
Yeah, so. He has a bit of form for that, and I think with Ian, you take the rough with the smooth. I think, and his relationship with Carl, I think, was a quite complicated one.
Yeah.
So right, anyway, we'll wrap this up. An hour and 10 we're on there. Tim, fantastic, really good information. Thanks for everything you do. Joking aside, we don't get those tickets. We're not
What is?
Right, thanks for coming back. Welcome back to Thanks for watching the live stream. Up the boot! You can subscribe to the Seasiders podcast in iTunes. Just go into your iTunes application on your computer or your phone. Go to the search field and type in Blackpool FC or Seasiders, and then you'll find us in the podcast listings. Please do take the time to leave us a review or a rating, as it does help us gain exposure in the iTunes store. We also have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Seasiders podcast. We're also on Twitter @SeasidersPod is my handle. Follow me and I will follow you back if you send me a tweet